Hi everyone, I'm Tom and today I'm going to be showing you Fit to Print. This is a game all about making the best front page. As the editor of one of many local newspapers in Thistleville, the front page is due in a few hours and as you can see, it is blank. We need to grab the best stories before the other papers can, the best photos, the best layout. But since we're against the clock, it can very easily go wrong. This is on Kickstarter right now from publisher Flatout Games, who you may recognise from such games as Calico, Cascadia and Verdant, designed by Peter McPherson, who you might know from a little game called Tiny Towns. And it's got artwork by Ian O'Toole, who you may recognise from some of the most beautiful board games from the last, well, quite a few years now. Nemo's War, Black Angel, all of the Vital Lacerda Deluxe editions. So many games at this point. What I'm saying is, there's a lot of precedence for being excited about this game. And that's all very well and good, but what about the game itself? Well, just before I get into that, I'll put a link to the campaign page in the description and in the corner of the screen so you can go and check out how to get hold of it. What the final game will have, I have a prototype here, which should give you a pretty good idea of what the final thing will look like. And not shown in a bird's eye view is the beautiful 3D news desks we've got. Let's talk about the standard game mode. There is also a solo game mode and a puzzle game mode. There's also a completely turn-based variant if you don't want the real time at all. I've got it set up for 2 players here with Little Glass Marty on his news desk. So we have our empty front pages, our news desks. We have some finishing tokens to grab based on who's quickest, because this is a timed game, at least the standard mode is. We have some centerpiece tiles and a great big pile of newspaper tiles, all face down and shuffled about. We decide at the start what kind of experience we want. It's basically the time that we're allowed for a round. If you would like frantic, you get 3 minutes. Standard is 4 minutes. Relaxed is 5 minutes. There are also some things that we can add for an advanced setup, but I'll talk about those later. In a round, there are no turns. We are playing in real time, grabbing these tiles and deciding whether or not we want them. This is the reporting phase. And then we will have a layout phase where all the tiles that we chose to keep will have to get arranged on our front pages. Before we start, we choose centerpieces. Now for the first round, this is just a random centerpiece that doesn't particularly do anything, but in future rounds, there are centerpieces that will score based on certain criteria, and we will choose these, starting with the player with the fewest points, in a future round that is. For the first round, they don't particularly do anything extra, but they need to be placed so that they cover up the star on our front page. This can be moved around later, as long as it's still covering up the star. The first round is Friday. If you see on our player boards here, there is a Friday zone of the game. The weekend editions get bigger. You see there's a shaded area for Saturday, and the other side of the page is for Sunday. The reporting phase is first up, and our little player aid here tells us exactly what we need to do. While the timer is ticking down, you need to grab tiles with one hand, bring them over to your news desk or your front page and flip it up, seeing what is on the front. Decide whether you like the tile or not. If you do like it, it goes on your desk. You can look through all the other tiles you've collected on your desk at any time, but you can never put them back. If you're not happy with it, it can go back into the middle, but it goes face up, so now everybody else can see what they can grab. So while our 3, 4 or 5 minute counter is ticking down, we are deciding which tiles we want, what we're happy with, how much we could possibly fit on our front pages in this time, because it's down to us as players how many of these tiles we take, what we think that we can fit on our player boards, and how best to arrange them so as we get the most points. As soon as you are happy with the number of tiles that you have got on your desk, you shout layout. This means that you are going into the layout phase. You are not allowed to take any more tiles from this point, but other players can carry on looking. Remember though, you've all got the same time limit and you need to have collected the tiles and laid them out before that time runs out. So let's say I've shouted layout, I am going into the layout phase. You can take the tiles off your desk at this point and lay them all out so you can see what you've got to work with. And we've got rules for placement, of course. I don't think I've taken enough tiles. We have to have the centerpiece tile covering up this star somehow, some way. It's up to us exactly where, but it's got to be covering up that star. The tiles have got to fit within the boundary of the grid. Remember, it's Friday. We can only use this non-shaded section. So Can't be doing that. That's going into Saturday's zone. It's not Saturday just yet. I could, of course, though, move the centerpiece along. It's still covering up the star, and then I could have my article there if I wanted. You have to place things the right way up. You are not allowed to rotate them. There are words and pictures on them to help you know which way is the right way up. These are the wrong way around, but they're not on the paper yet. Articles of the same colour, see I've got these 2 blue articles here, are not allowed to be adjacent on any side. If you do accidentally do that when we are scoring the papers, you have to flip them face down and you're not going to score for those things. So make sure they're not touching. Ads, these orange things, cannot be adjacent on any sides either. So I want to space out my money-making opportunities because otherwise they're going to be flipped around as well. Photos are not allowed to be touching other photos on any sides either. So that's another thing that we have got to be worrying about. Now you are allowed, if you have made a mistake in taking tiles and there's just no way of placing them, you are allowed to put them face down. You know, if I had no other option here, because they can still cover up blank space and reduce the number of leftover tiles that you've got, because we don't want leftover tiles. As it happens, I think I am quite close to taking a good number of tiles here. That's pretty nice. If I could have taken, you know, a nice strip piece, I mean, that would have fitted perfectly in there. We'd have had a couple of slots left, but I think that's how I'm going to leave it. So unfortunately, I've got a tile left over. I've got some blank spaces here. This isn't necessarily the way that I have to arrange this, though, of course. Like, maybe you can see a better arrangement for these particular tiles. When you've finished laying out your paper, you shout print and grab the lowest numbered finishing token that is still left. When the timer runs out or everyone has shouted print, the round ends and we move on to scoring. If the timer runs out and has forced you to stop, you still take the next finishing token along. Of course, you've got to stop. And of course, while this was all going on, Marty will have been arranging his newspaper a little bit overconfident on what he could fit on there, but you just don't know. So when it comes to scoring, and remember, prototype, we look at my articles. They score you the number of points shown on them. So here I would have 2, 3, 5, 7, minus 1 point for every article that you couldn't place. So that would be 6 altogether. Photos score points for the colour, so the type of article they're next to, or the mood of article that they're next to. There are articles that are good news, so they've got the yellow, happy, sunny face, or they are bad news, so they've got the unhappy cat. So this photo here wanted to be next to green or pink. I do have 1 green next to it, so it'd be worth 1 point. Would have been nice to get this one next to it as well, but I couldn't. In the time that I had anyway. And this photo wanted to be next to blue articles. Again, they're so close to each other, but only 1 for each of those photos. Your centerpiece scores you points based on its criteria, but at the start of the game, we just get these standard ones. It's later on that that's going to come into effect. Like, the centerpiece gets you minus a point, but your 2-point articles are worth 3 points now. Shelf stacked for holidays, it's worth a point, plus a point for every 2 articles not adjacent to white space. So you get nothing for the centerpiece right now. For white space, you look at the largest area of adjacent tiles that are empty. So I rearranged mine a little bit so that the largest area would just be 3, rather than having a 1 and a 5. Marty, though, done me one better. He's made it so that he's only got 1s. So if you've got the smallest area of white space, you get 3 points. If you've got the largest, you lose a point. So I get minus 1 for my white space. We look at the mood balance. So not everything's great news. You don't want it to be completely dreary though. You want a balance between the two. You look at the difference between your smiley and frowny spaces. You ideally want 0, but if there is a difference, you lose that many points. I unfortunately, in my racing to be first to lay these things out, took on far too many bad news pieces. That's why I hastily put this in towards the end. That we'll put a bit of good news in. I've got 6 bad moods and 1 good mood. That's going to be minus 5 points. Any other unplaced tiles lose a point each. I already lost the points in the article scoring though for this one. So for this round, I've only scored 8, minus 1, 7, minus 5. I scored 2. Way too hasty. But we also get some ad revenue. We look at the dollar signs. I've got $2, $3, $4 in ad revenue because you want to try and get the most ad revenue as well. At the end of the game, the player with the lowest ad revenue is out of the game and doesn't score. In a 2-player game, it's different, of course, because the elimination would just make 1 winner and the points would be pointless. it would just be all about ads. If one player has more than a $5 difference in ad revenue, the player with the least ad revenue loses 10 points. So it's still a great big factor, but you're not going to be completely put out of the game for having a lot less ad revenue. And if you can keep within 5 of the other player, then you won't take that penalty. Over at Marty's, he got 2, 4, 5, 6 for his articles. His photos wanted to be next to green, so that would be worth a point. Wanted to be next to pink or blue. He didn't do that in his haste to get it all arranged and make the white space as few as possible. So he only gets 1 for his photos. Centerpiece, not in the first round. White space, he got the best, so he gets 3 points for that. So big swing. His mood's a little bit more balanced, actually. It's completely balanced. 3 good news, 3 bad news. Again, another hasty change in the last minute. So he gets 0 points for his mood. Leftovers, he does have 2 leftover tiles, so he will take a bit of a penalty there. But the first round, 7, 10, minus 2 is 8. So he's leading 8-2 at the moment, and he's still managed, across all of this, to get $3, $4, $5, $6, $7 in ad revenue. So he's leading in points, he's leading in ad revenue. At the end of Friday and Saturday, we lay out some centerpieces, 1 per player, but 3 in a 2-player game. These are all shuffled up at the start of the game and flipped around because they're all double-sided with different things on them. The player with the lowest number of finishing token, so me in this case, the fastest player, gets to choose their centerpiece first. So a centerpiece that's worth 5 points, but you must take every tile you pick up. News only laws with a point. If you win the top white space bonus, score an additional 3 points. So 6 points for having the least white space. Tips for a tidy workspace. You get ad revenue equal to each white space area at least 4 squares in size. So probably guaranteeing that you'll lose the points on that, but you could get yourself a big increase in ad revenue if you work it out well enough. So we would choose one of these centerpieces each for our new days. Get rid of the previous days. Clear our newspaper boards, flip everything face down again and shuffle it all around, and then repeat the round again. Now we can use the shaded space because it's Saturday. Go through the whole thing again, score it, flip our front pages over to Sundays, where we've got a massive area to fill up, still with the same time limit, of course, though. And then at the end of Sunday, we look at who's got the least ad revenue. That player is out, apart from the 2-player special thing that I've mentioned earlier. And then out of the remaining players, most points wins. The solo mode and puzzle modes are still being tweaked and worked on, but currently there is a different white space bonus for the solo mode because, of course, you're not competing with anybody. So it depends on the size of your white space. You get 3 points if your largest white space is 3 or fewer, 1 point if it's 4 to 7 spaces, minus 1 point if it's 8 or more spaces. You randomly draw 2 centerpiece tiles and just pick one of them, and you must have ad revenue of at least $12 to win the game, and you're trying to beat your own score. But there is also a puzzle mode. You can still play this timed, but you can remove the timer if you want a really relaxed mode. You can play it solo if you want to, but you can compete to try and get the highest score in all of this. There are various puzzle layouts that give you a selection of tiles to grab at the start of whichever puzzle you're doing, and it tells you, a day to use as well. And in either 5 minutes in time mode or unlimited if you would like to relax. You only need to complete the layout phase because you've already been given an exact assortment of tiles. You must place all of the ads, but you will not be able to place all of the other tiles. It's your job to decide how to place what you're given to try and get the highest score from the particular puzzle, the particular arrangement that you are given. So that's the standard way to play, but there are a couple of extra things that we can put in an advanced setup. We've got these player aids here with a lovely little critter on them. You can flip these over. This is your press pass and will be your special power for this particular game. Like, you begin the game with $3 ad revenue, a good leg up, hopefully give you a nice cushion above the other players to not get eliminated at the very end, or you can take an extra tile during the layout phase. So after you've realised how you have messed up in a particular way, whether your mood's completely out of whack, you've got too many things of the same colour that you need something to separate them and not give you a load of white space, you can take one extra tile, hopefully, from all of the face-up ones that are now there because you finished first and the other players just kept going. And there are also 3 breaking news decks that we can play with. You shuffle these all around, and at the beginning of each day, so just in setup for the Friday, we reveal that day's card. Don't sugarcoat. Friday's memo, good news articles cannot touch. So an extra wrinkle, an extra restriction for us for that particular day. It could be requirements like ads must touch articles today. Or it could be bonuses like for Saturday we need to step up our photography. The player with the highest score from photos earns $3. Keep it airy. Sunday, the top white space bonus is increased to 7 points. So with quite a few for each day, there are a lot of extra wrinkles that in their various combinations will help to keep things very varied in your newsroom. So that is Fit to Print. I hope this intrigued you about the game, and if it did, again, it is on Kickstarter right now. The campaign page is linked in the description, and you can go and check it out there. See all of the final stuff and see how you can make it happen. If you'd like to know what I think about the game, then you can see my first impressions linked very shortly. All that's in the description as well. You can see plenty more from me on this channel. There's hundreds of playthroughs and things. Hey, you can see videos for those games I mentioned, like Calico, Cascadia, and Verdant. Thank you very much for watching this one, though, and I'll see you for the next game. Bye, everyone.